Welcome to Second Take. Now, our show structure is changing just a little bit. See, we've got a lot of elections in Africa this year, and we wanted to make sure that you are sufficiently educated on how to, criticize or ridicule each country going to the elections. So, for example, our episode next week is going to be completely dedicated to South Africa. Of course, if something interesting happens along the way, Museveni in Uganda is always busy, we will put it in our stories of the week, but ultimately it's going to be country-focused shows, starting with today, which is our last recap show. But it is going to work. Why? Because Zimbabwe had its Independence Day on the 18th of April, and there's a chance that I've said Robert Mugabe's name more than I have said my own. So we've brought you all the times that I've spoken about Zimbabwe as we celebrate the country that is known as the House of Stone. My name is Ashwin Betty. This is Second Take. All right, so you think Zimbabwe, you hear words like inflation, you hear words like currency, you hear words like sanctions, and you hear words like elections. It's always a spectacle. Something always happens when Zimbabwe goes to the elections. So this is how we covered the most recent Zimbabwean election. Zimbabwe just completed their general elections, and this time things were different. Not the result, but how folks responded to the electoral process. In a critical report by the SADC Observer Mission led by former Zambian Vice President Nevers Mumba, they say that some aspects of the harmonized elections fell short of the requirements of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Electoral Act, and the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. The mission noted that just 64% of the voting stations observed opened on time, 36% did not open on time, and some opened 12 hours after the stipulated time. It pointed to restrictive access to the voters' roll, limitations on freedom of expression and assembly, and highlighted concerns about voter intimidation. The African Union, which ran an election observer mission alongside the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, was similarly critical. But that was not enough to stop Namibian President Dr. Hage Geingob from conveying his heartfelt congratulations, applauding the re-election of Mnangagwa, highlighting it as a testament to the enduring trust and confidence that the people of Zimbabwe continue to place in their leader and the ruling ZANU-PF party, according to a statement from the presidency, to which Zimbabweans in Namibia gave the most bombastic of side eyes. They claimed that the president enjoyed seeing the people of Zimbabwe suffer. With an inflation rate that hovers around 170%, one can make sense of their sentiments. For Namibians that expect to head to elections next year, the message raised some alarms because one has to wonder what their own country's approach to elections will be after their president seemingly sees no issue with elections that have been widely regarded as questionable. But it wasn't just the Namibian president that had strong opinions to endure after supporting President Mnangagwa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa also congratulated the incumbent. Now, comments on his Twitter/X post included Zimbabweans saying that they are packing their bags and moving to South Africa, which of course is a reminder of the immigration issues faced by both nations. And then there was ANC Secretary General Mbalula Fikile, who also attracted the ire of Zimbabwean opposition supporters for his comments on the election. Now, in a response to the military coup in Gabon, Fikile said that we cannot support military coups in Africa, to which Zimbabweans swiftly reminded him that Mnangagwa himself was ushered in by a military coup in 2017. Because after all, if one lacks self-awareness, Twitter/X remains a mirror for social consciousness. Now, if you're looking for consistency, you're likely not going to be able to find it in the Zimbabwean political scene. Of course, this is the same anyway. I mean, look at the USA. I'm serious. Sometimes if you just look at Trump and you follow Mugabe's trajectory, you can find more similarities than you think. But like I said, in Zimbabwe's political field, things get a little shaky, things get a little weird. Have a look. In Zimbabwe, there are murmurings of the opposition party planning on changing its name. Now, this won't be the first time because CCC itself was a name change that occurred in 2022 and was brought about when opposition leader Nelson Chamisa abandoned the MDC Alliance name following squabbles with Douglas Mwanzora, who leads the MDC team. Now, the MDC Alliance was formed by several political parties in Zimbabwe before Mwanzora claimed and wrestled the name from Chamisa. So the party became CCC, and they went into elections last year under their yellow banner, elections which were widely criticized as not free and fair, but what's new? Well, one thing. A random figure, Sabangu, appeared and recalled CCC members of parliament using the authority of a made-up position, Secretary General of the CCC. This was naturally accepted by the ZANU-PF-led parliament, which has led to by-elections for those seats. And surprise, surprise, ZANU-PF is leading. Political analysts say that CCC party was infiltrated because of a lack of structure, and it is difficult to disagree. For their supporters, it must be annoying having to change t-shirt colors, logos, and visual messaging twice in 3 years. It is also jarring that such a loophole was exploited because the top brass of CCC is made up of reputable lawyers. The party for decades has alleged that ZANU-PF is a thief of democracy that manipulates systems to intimidate and suppress the will of the people. But somehow, the best way to engage with such an entity is to have a political party that is as prepared as Robert Mugabe was for the military coup that ousted him, or as secure as the gold that the president's niece Henrietta Rushwaya got caught trying to smuggle out of the country. If you know that you are facing a crocodile, put yourself in a cage. Don't go into the water with a swimming costume and motivational tweets.
Welcome to Namibia, where adventure meets tranquility. With Enjoy, you have access to a wide range of accommodations to suit every traveler's taste and budget. Experience the finest dining and hospitality Namibia has to offer. Booking your dream accommodation is just a few clicks away with Enjoy. Join thousands of happy travelers who have trusted Enjoy for their Namibian getaway. Your gateway to unforgettable Namibian adventures. Visit us today at enjoy.my.na.
So, sanctions are always mentioned next to Zimbabwe, mostly because Zimbabwe has had sanctions placed on it for over 2 decades. Now, the USA decided to remove the wholesale sanctions, but the niche sanctions, the personalized sanctions, well, they kept those going. Now, the United States imposed targeted sanctions on Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa, the First Lady, the Vice President, and other officials for alleged corruption and human rights abuses. The Treasury Department sanctioned 3 entities and 11 individuals, accusing Mnangagwa of protecting gold and diamond smugglers, directing officials to sell these items in illicit markets, and accepting bribes. So basically, they watched gold mafia like the rest of us. And as the rest of us know, there was nothing done to the individuals that we watched accept and facilitate bribes on Al Jazeera's YouTube. Of course, the alleged corruption and human rights abuses are nothing new, but I guess the US wanted to make it clear that it has not been a group project. What was certainly interesting to observe, though, is Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema's response to the sanctions. He focused on the seemingly lifted national sanctions, and to him, that was pleasant to see. But it's hard not to feel like some shade was thrown at everyone's favorite scarf-wearing crocodile. That's until you realize that HH actually invited main opposition leader of Zimbabwe at the time, Nelson Chamisa, to his inauguration because HH himself was a long-time opposition politician. After the initial SADC report on the irregularities during the Zim election, it was clear to see that HH was happy to do away with the old way of doing things, which for SADC has been ignoring what is happening in Zimbabwe, buying into and selling the idea that sanctions were placed on the entire nation, when really they were placed on individuals that grabbed so much power that sanctioning them looks like you're sanctioning ordinary Zimbabweans. SADC turned a blind eye to election violence, and to be honest, they even allowed their alleged compatriot and Tanganyika Brotherhood member Robert Mugabe to lose his leadership, albeit equally, if not more corrupted in itself, to a military coup. All the while ignoring the voices of Zimbabweans who have decided that perhaps a lack of political freedom, currency, and electricity with an abundance of corruption is a concoction that no one can live on. Now, I don't know if the US ever does anything that does not selfishly serve them. I won't even start to count the US-sponsored coups and genocide. But I will say this: asking for sanctions to be lifted without paying any attention to why they were placed in the first place is like asking for the removal of a do not swim sign without focusing on the crocodiles in the water that prompted the placement of the sign. Now, as you know, Africa is a village. And we don't mean that in a, weird colonial tribal way. No, we mean as in community, as in Zimbabweans and Zambians. If they don't tell you who they are, you're mostly not going to be able to tell the difference because the countries are connected, of course, not just by the Victoria Falls, but by the people and also the political fields. So we had some interesting intersecting stories between Zimbabwe and Zambia. One of them starts off with the Zambian bishop who got some ideas from the aforementioned US sanctions. All right, let's talk about the country that I sent Lobola cattle to, Zambia. Now, Emeritus Archbishop Telesfo Mpundu, the chairperson of a civil society group called OSIDA, has petitioned Joe Biden, the president of the USA, through the American embassy in Zambia, to consider imposing sanctions against President Hichilema for presiding over what he says is a regime that has destroyed the country's institutions of good governance. So, obviously, he never heard of Edgar Lungu, king of the cadets. Setting that aside, we all know that this is something familiar. We know where it's coming from. Clearly, after the US pinned sanctions onto Zimbabwe's leadership, OSIDA thought that this would be applicable to Hakainde Hichilema, as if sanctions are a buy one, get one free deal for SADC presidents. OSIDA didn't consider a few details. For example, Zimbabwe has the highest inflation rate in the world, has not had what is deemed a free and fair election in decades. Personal aides to the president have been in videos taking and facilitating bribes. Human rights abuses have been alleged since 1983, read on Gukurahundi, and Zambia has never had a military coup. In fact, Zambia's democracy is lauded for its ability to change political parties several times with little to no issues. So to wake up and petition a foreign entity to treat your country's leaders the same way they are treating the leaders of a country that is a shadow of its former glory is the kind of political reaching that actually reminds me that OSIDA's chairperson is an archbishop, and he was simply practicing faith, the evidence of things unseen.
Attention kids, we have some exciting news for you. We are back and this year we are planning on going big. So listen up. If you are in grade 3, grade 2, grade 1 or pre-primary, we are bringing your free school workbooks to you soon. This is all you need to know about where you can find your books. Books will be available for free in Republican Street Sale newspapers and all Namibian Sun newspapers. And for all pre-primary kids out there, your books will be delivered to your school in all 14 regions of Namibia. And there's more. Pre-primary books will also be printed in 9 different languages. Check out when your book will be available from the schedule right here. That's not all. Our free online school is there to help you along the way with video lessons and more books to download. You can also follow along on NTV every Monday to Friday from 9:30 to 11:30 for your daily online school lesson. We thank all our sponsors who are helping to build a brighter future for Namibia. Contact us at info@acdtrust.com and follow us on Instagram.
So, like I said, Zambia and Zimbabwe, plenty of relations. In fact, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa spent a large part of his life in Zambia, being a part of the former ruling party for a long time as well, with family members there. So, lots of intersections, lots of, familiar ground. However, things got a little tense when it came to H.H. Hakainde Hichilema against some Zimbabwean political commentators. Last week, we spoke about Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema catching a whiff of coup soup, and at first glance, it was difficult to discern from whence the presidential paranoia stemmed from, given how high Zambia scores on the democracy index. Turns out he just had to look across the Victoria Falls because certain comments were made by Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF functionaries in Harare following Hichilema's emissary, Nevers Mumba, leading a SADC observers mission that discredited Zimbabwe's recent elections. ZANU-PF's Rutendo Matanyire tweeted that the Zambian president and his SADC observation team leader had a conflict of interest, alleging that Nelson Chamisa is Hichilema's friend and HH paid for Chamisa's election campaign. Now, this was not the comment that went as far as sparking protests in Zambia. It was when he tweeted that Levi Mwanawasa, a former president of Zambia that had to mediate between Robert Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai, had died because he was allegedly orchestrating an invasion of Zimbabwe. And Hichilema too will see that you don't mess with Africa. ZANU-PF Treasurer Patrick Chinamasa echoed the same remarks, to which Zambians immediately demanded answers. Some protesters hoisted a large banner written, "We want to know why you want to kill President Hakainde Hichilema, as alleged in your statement." Others held placards inscribed, "He is cleaning your mess, but you keep ranting. Shame on you." The aforementioned President Mwanawasa called Mugabe's Zimbabwe a sinking Titanic after repeated allegations of rigged elections logged against ZANU-PF. He died in 2008. Now, ironically, President Mnangagwa grew up and went to school in Zambia. Part of his family still lives in Mumbwa in Zambia. He was a youth leader of Zambia's Independence Party, UNIP. But much like an argument over Victoria Falls, there seems to be no love lost between ZANU-PF and the current Zambian leadership. Yet on any level, such statements and what they allude to is unacceptable. But ZANU-PF can often be like that friend that you bring to your family function that gets too inebriated to avoid being senselessly disruptive. As much as you can't stop them from getting drunk, you'll be happy if they at least managed to keep quiet. But who am I to ask that a party doesn't make inflationary statements when the economy they are currently overseeing hovers around a 170% inflation rate? Inflation is their thing. However, President Mnangagwa has a solution for the nation that, much like charity, begins at home, which leads us into our next story. Now, this one's an interesting one because announcing his cabinet on Monday, Mnangagwa said one of his younger sons, David Kudakwashe Mnangagwa, would be second in charge at the Treasury, while appointing a nephew, Tonga Mnangagwa, as deputy minister in the tourism ministry. David Kodakoshe Mnangagwa, who has no experience in government, is an actuary who previously sat on the board of a bank. He also graduated with a law degree about 2 weeks ago at the University of Zimbabwe, and he came into parliament through a youth quota. You know, a lot of people are calling this nepotism, but maybe we are the problem. Maybe we all don't know what it means to put family first. I mean, when a country has one of the worst economies in the world, why look for someone that has the experience of running an economy when you can assign your son, who, in his defense, could have been one of those kids that gets sent to the shops and then comes back with more money than he left with? I just thought that the reason someone seizes power is to do things differently. Because at some point, Mnangagwa was also of the opinion that Grace Mugabe was not qualified to succeed Uncle Bob. But much like Grace's qualifications, just last week, he conferred First Lady Auxilia Mnangagwa a Doctor of Philosophy in Law honorary degree. And again, I think we are all at fault for not seeing a problem with this, or rather for seeing a problem with this. See, we're all thinking selfishly and not considering his marriage. Some wives need more than flowers and dates. Undeserved academic qualifications is how the real husbands of African coups get it done. I don't make the rules.
E-Ticket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nmh.com.na.
We are all seeking connection to each other, to the world, to the spaces we exist in.
Poor sportsmanship right now from the lads.
You might be physically ready, your body is ready, but mentally.
Here's another chance, and it is a goal from Vindo Kaha.
Hy sê wie is er aan neertrek en daai bal het my grond gevat. Ja, hy het grond gevat en is
But just enough next.
Running that mountain up. Okay, so we will be doing this for the mountain climber. More advanced, slightly advanced.
So is jou trolley reg? Want
I love it. I love it. So then
kickstart our countdown at number 5 with this one. Op Netwerk TV se Klets Kompas gesels ons nuus van 'n Maandag tot Donderdag. Ons kyk ook na die weer en meer. Stories wat jou raak en stories wat saak maak.
They've made a mistake in denying me bail, and they've made several other mistakes in many other cases.
The channels that teach us something new or reflect our expression. So it goes beyond switching to the right station. It's about choosing the experience that can adorn the present, dressing it with our tastes as we expand our preferences, because what we are actually connecting to is boundless, limitless human energy. And this is the spirit of NTV.
So that's been our second take episode focused on Zimbabwe, bringing you all the times that we have spoken about the House of Stone. Don't get it twisted. Zimbabweans are incredible, incredible people. But often we find that the people on the ground and the people in power have some glaring disparities. But for me, Ashumberi, I'm going to go and have myself some high firidzi, you know, when they put the sadza with the beef, with the vegetables. Google it. High firidzi. It's a special thing that they do in Zimbabwe. And I'll be seeing you next week as we dig into South Africa.